So we're still here, despite coronavirus, or COVID-19, to give it its correct title. We're still here, people are still talking about it, and I guess we're going to have to talk about it too. But life goes on, and especially in the coming week for tenants.
Absolutely, yeah, because at least there's some good news there, I think.
I think so, and it's given that at least half of the population of apartments are tenants, are renters. It's a big issue for us too. So we'll be talking about that. I'm Jimmy Thompson.
I'm Sue Williams.
And this is the Flat Chat Wrap. Next Monday, the 23rd of March, a whole raft of new tenancy laws come in New South Wales.
And this is a good thing?
Well, I think it's a good thing if you're a tenant. It doesn't include the one thing that a lot of tenants want, which is the end of the no-cause ending of leases. At the moment, you can still say, well, we just want our apartment back either at the end of the current lease or with a certain amount of notice given. And that can be quite disruptive, and it certainly doesn't help to create the idea that living in rented accommodation is a permanent option for people.
Why isn't that being included? How can the government justify not including that?
Well, I mean, what they say is that ultimately the apartment or the house belongs to the landlord, and they have to have the freedom to be able to use it any way they want, and otherwise they would stop putting these apartments up for rent. And of course, the reality is that landlords are moving into Airbnb rentals because they have much fewer restrictions on them for now. Certainly in places like Melbourne and elsewhere up in Queensland, it's to their advantage in a lot of cases to go on to short-term holiday rentals.
Well, maybe coronavirus, if nothing else, will kind of put a bit of a stop to that, really, because I think Airbnb is really becoming less popular at the moment because of coronavirus.
Because people can't or won't travel. When you think about it, all these people who have rented houses and apartments with the intention of subletting them on short-term holiday lets, they must be getting worried. And a good thing too, if you ask me.
Yeah, look, I think renting is a lifestyle choice, and it's always been around in Europe, very much more so than in Australia. In Australia, tenants are very much regarded as second-class citizens, the kind of people who are trying to save up for a house but they just can't afford it, or an apartment, obviously. And I think actually renting, can be a long-term viable option for many people. Yeah. So therefore, landlords should be more responsible. I mean, it's a different thing providing housing to any other service.
Yes.
Housing is fundamental to people, and there should be real safeguards there. I mean, this is a good step in the right direction, these new laws, but I think they should be going a bit further and including the abolition of that no-cause end of leasing arrangement. I mean, it's appalling. I know lots of people who have been renting accommodation, and as the housing market prices go up, their rents have gone up, or the landlords have said to them, no, I want to take the place back myself, and then they see an advert for the place being rented for more money. Yeah. And that kind of thing shouldn't be happening.
No, and especially when, we live in a country where you get huge tax breaks on your investment properties. I mean, massive tax breaks. And, it just still feels that things are loaded in favour of the landlord.
Yes, that's right. And, I mean, in buying apartments, we've had huge problems with sunset clawbacks, as we know, and we mounted a campaign that ended up very successfully persuading the government to bring in new laws to stop people cancelling sales contracts in order to sell to other people for more money. Yeah. And it's kind of the rental equivalent, isn't it?
Yeah, where you say, I need the apartment or the house back because I'm going to move into it, simply because there are limits on how much you can put the rent up by. Then you once the tenant's gone, you put the rent up by much more than you would have been allowed to, because there are restrictions through fair trading in New South Wales, certainly. Well, these are New South Wales laws, and one of the new laws is you can only put the rent up once a year.
Which sounds reasonable, doesn't it, really?
It does. I mean, I worry that it might, with the coronavirus, it won't drive people to Airbnb, because I think a lot of those Airbnb properties are going to come back on the market fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I would have worried that a lot of landlords would have gone, well, I don't want that kind of restriction. But now they got to like it or lump it, basically, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, there's always the argument of having a regular tenant there who's probably a really responsible, good tenant who's going to be there for 52 weeks a year and be paying a little bit less than somebody who's going to be there just, now and again through Airbnb.
Quite a lot less.
Yeah, and but there's a lot less wear on the property as well.
Yeah, and a lot less wear on the neighbours who get sick of different people moving in next door every second week. What other changes in the law caught your eye?
I think how tenants now have to be informed if the apartment or the house was used before for drug manufacture.
Oh yes, that's what they call that, material information or something like that. Yeah, there's a few things like that. One of the major things for us in Strata is the landlord now has to show the tenants the bylaws before they sign the lease. It used to be that you signed the lease and then the tenant would be given the bylaws.
Which is absolutely crazy. I mean, what if you had a pet and the bylaws ban pets?
Yeah, and I mean, people think that all bylaws are the same, and we know that they're not. Theoretically, every apartment block in Australia, in Australia and certainly in New South Wales, could have different bylaws. And you could come into a building thinking that you were allowed to do certain things, assuming that you were allowed to do certain things, and it's only when you read the bylaws that you find out things like having pets or playing music or whatever, and you find out that there are restrictions there that you'd never imagined.
That's right. I mean, I remember knowing two guys who moved into an apartment in Manly, and only afterwards did they discover that they were only allowed to do their washing on something like a Tuesday on a Friday, and they could only hang out their washing to dry on the communal lines between, 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. And I mean, it sounds a really minor thing, but that could be really irritating.
Yeah.
I mean, if you miss the wash day...
Yeah, you got a week's laundry.
That's right. And I think they felt that if they'd have known beforehand how picky the block was about stuff like that, they would never have gone there because it really impinged on their lifestyle. So I think it's a great idea being able to see the bylaws, and you kind of think, this is the sort of change. Why on earth wasn't it there before?
Right, well, these things evolve. I mean, I'm being slightly cynical about the bylaws thing. I think for a lot of tenants it would be quite informative for them to find out there were bylaws and that they were supposed to follow them.
Sure. But there's also rules, I think new rules come in governing breaking fees when you break a tenancy. Which again surprised me that there weren't rules in place anyway. But it seems that now at the moment, before these laws come in place, landlords can decide whether they're going to charge you, the price to advertise the place again, or I've heard of some landlords charging people the whole amount till the end of their tenancy. And that just seems really arbitrary as well.
Well, the tenant can always dispute that at fair trading, but the hassle factor.
Yeah, and not knowing what the result's going to be, really.
Yeah.
Because the laws seem to be changing.
And I can tell you what the break fees are. It's 4 weeks rent if less than 25% of the lease has expired. 3 weeks if 25 to 50% of the lease has expired. 2 weeks rent if 50% but less than 75%. And 1 week's rent if more than 75% of the lease has expired.
That sounds pretty reasonable, really.
And when you consider that the standard lease these days is 1 year, you're basically paying 1 week's rent if you're going out 3 months early before the lease is expired, which is, it works both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought most leases were about 6 months, but you think they're probably more likely 1 year.
Actually, no, you're right. 6 months is the standard. You're right. 6 months is the standard lease. It tends to be that people will get a 6 months lease and then the renewed lease is a year, rather than just allowing it to roll into a continuing tenancy.
And it depends on whether the market's going up or down as well. I mean, I think when the market's going up, landlords tend to let out their properties for only 6 months with the option to renew because they might want to increase the rent. But in a falling market, it's in their interest to have a long lease.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they know that rents are likely to fall.
Yeah, and these only apply to fixed term agreements. if you're on a rolling tenancy, then that you just give notice, which is 2 or 3 weeks or a month or something like that.
Sure. And the other thing that caught my eye was the new rules around apartments having adequate ventilation.
Yeah.
Because we've heard recently about a lot of people being troubled by mould in their apartments, where there's been a real problem long term of water ingress.
Yeah.
And that's, maybe landlords haven't been very diligent about repairing them. And it's caused lots of mould, which can be incredibly toxic, especially if, you're a little bit sensitive to that. I was contacted by a woman who has a child who's incredibly sensitive to mould issues as well. And they'd done an enormous amount of work in their apartment to repair it and make it fit for habitation on their own cost, really. And it still wasn't satisfactory at the end of the period. So it's nice that people get a bit more protection if landlords aren't as diligent as they should be.
It sounds ridiculous, but they brought in these minimum standards, 7 points. One is it has to be structurally sound. It has to have adequate natural or artificial lighting in every room, except storage rooms. Adequate ventilation, as you said. It has to be supplied with electricity or gas.
Wow.
And has and has an adequate outlets for lighting, heating, and appliances. That's quite interesting. And what's adequate? You don't want to see these multi-socket things snaking all over apartments.
But it is really annoying in rental properties. I mean, having rented for many years before I bought, when you just don't have enough power places,
the sockets,
it's just awful. And then you end up having to have wires just draping everywhere just because you've only got a few sockets and you just don't have enough in each room.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. This is the room we're in. I mean, this is a 20-year-old apartment, and just this little room has 6 power points in it.
Wow.
And in the old days, you'd be lucky to have one.
Yeah.
A hole in the wall so you could plug in from next door. Adequate plumbing and drainage, connected to a water supply service for the supply of hot and cold water for drinking, washing and cleaning. So hot water, you got to supply hot water.
Isn't it incredible that they're putting these rules in place, like as if, maybe some apartments or houses are let without those kind of facilities.
Yeah, and the number 7 is it must have bathroom facilities, including toilet and washing facilities that allow user privacy.
Oh, okay.
It also says, if a rented property meets the minimum standards, it does not automatically mean it is fit for habitation, unquote, as these are baseline standards and are not a full list of whether or not a property is fit for habitation. I mean, I guess the way it works is that you sign the lease, you go into the apartment and you go, hang on, there's a lot of stuff missing here. There's no ventilation, there's no natural light. And it gives the tenant the option then to go back and say, you haven't fulfilled your part of the deal as required by the law. Otherwise, you would go in and go, hang on, there's no hot and cold water here, I don't want to move in.
Well, and it's hard. When the market was rising really quickly, a lot of people were renting out places like sheds at the bottom of their garden, garages. They were building makeshift places over garages. I mean, obviously some people were building proper apartments over garages, which were fantastic. But I think a lot of people were letting out little spaces around their own homes for a minimum cost. And a lot of people were moving in there because they just didn't have the money. And I suppose this protects them really against going into a place where it really isn't fit for human habitation in the 21st century.
Yeah. There's new laws on smoke alarms. Landlords have to carry out an annual check on the smoke alarms, and if they need to repair or replace the smoke alarm that is not working, they've got 2 days to get it done.
Gosh. Well, that's good, isn't it?
Well,
I mean,
it's a safety thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a life issue, isn't it, really?
Yes. And then there's a whole bunch of things like minor changes that you're now allowed to do with the permission of the landlord that must not be unreasonably withheld, including securing furniture to a non-tiled wall for safety reasons.
Oh, if a bookcase was going to fall over on a child or something.
Bookcases you get from IKEA with a little tab that everybody throws away, but that allows you to fix it to the wall to stop it falling over. I mean, it's not actually holding it up it's standing on its own, but it stops it from tilting forward.
No, it's good, because I've only ever made one IKEA bookcase in my student days, and it was so wonky. It was always falling over with the books. And unfortunately, I had a fish bowl once.
Oh, no.
There. But I managed to rescue the fish off the floor.
Oh, well done.
After the bowl smashed.
Right.
But I'm sure it was a bit of a scary thing for the fish. It was a scary thing for me, really, too. And that was the last time I ever tried IKEA furniture.
One of the interesting ones listed is installing a wireless removable outdoor security camera. I don't know how many tenants would do that, but you can do it now, folks.
Wow. I guess maybe if you're a bit scared of...
Or maybe just for security. I mean, we tend to think in terms of apartments, obviously. But I guess if you were renting a house and you were worried about people, coming in and breaking in when you're not there or whatever, then a security camera would help.
That's a really good argument to be living in an apartment again, isn't it?
Yeah. And the Owners Corporation will install the security cameras for you.
Sure. It sounds like a horror movie. You're sitting watching TV and you're watching the pictures outside your house from the security camera, and you're watching someone trying to break in. And you're phoning the police, and the police say, oh, we can't come for another 25 minutes.
Yes.
And you're saying, look, I can see he's almost in now.
It's not entirely the same thing. You just reminded me of a story I read in The Guardian years ago. This family had gone to Paris, and they were up the Eiffel Tower, and they're about the third level up, and they're looking over the side, and the little girl turned and said, Daddy, why are those people at our car?
Oh, no.
They look down and see their car being broken into and all their holiday stuff being pulled out the back.
Oh, wouldn't that be horrific?
I think that must have been the days before mobile phones, so they could have done something about it.
Oh, gosh.
Maybe. But they were in France, calling up the French police and trying to explain where your car is.
Oh, no, and it reminds me of the film, was it The Postman Always Knocks Twice? When somebody's at home alone and they're kind of really scared of somebody that they might break in, and then suddenly a man... Look, I probably got the wrong movie, but the man suddenly appears from behind the sofa and he's actually in the house. And I remember that really put me off horror films forevermore, because it was so frightening.
Yeah.
Well, sofas are quite good for hiding behind when you're watching Doctor Who as a kid, I always used to find, but yes.
I'm not allowed to throw you under the bus anymore, so I can't correct the name of the film.
Is that not the right film?
Postman Always Rings Twice.
Oh, what did I say? Postman Always Knocks Twice. Well, it was a minor change.
Yeah. What else have we got? There's going to be restrictions on use of photos for advertising the apartment when it's being put up for rent when the tenants are still there. They have to give permission for photographs to be taken when they've got their stuff in the photographs.
See, again, I can't believe that wasn't always a rule.
People go online and they see their apartment being advertised, and then they go, well, there's my jewellery box sitting in the bedroom, and things like that. And as we know, there are people who scour the internet for things like that, looking for the opportunity to steal stuff. So basically, I think it's a lot of good stuff in these laws, which come in next week. Some of these things will apply immediately. Things like getting permission to put up pictures and fix things to the wall. But a lot of them won't apply until next week for new contracts. But it's good. I think it's good.
Absolutely. And I think rather than looking and saying, oh, it's going to be more restrictive on landlords, I think we should be saying, well, it just makes renting a much more attractive option for people. Yeah. And that should be welcomed by landlords as well.
Yeah. Okay. You can find all the details about the new rental laws on the Flat Chat website, flat-chat.com.au. When we come back, we're going to look at the ongoing saga of the Liberal Party trying to stop developers from joining local councils. That's after this.
Jimmy, what's this about the Liberal Party and developers on local councils?
Well, we ran a story a couple of weeks ago. Somebody in the Liberal Party, and this is in New South Wales, thought it's not a good look for us to have developers on local councils. And remember, we discussed Mahir as an example among many of developers who got themselves onto local councils. Not all of them end up in jail, it has to be said. Probably a few more should. But the Liberal Party decided this is not a good look for us, and they decided to have an internal thing that nobody who's a developer could run under the Liberal flag. Okay, which fair enough, they can do that. But the right-wing faction in the Liberal Party thought that this was too much. They didn't want this, they didn't like this, mainly because some of them are connected to some of these developers. So they came back and said, no, that's not going to pass. So somebody on the left wing of the Liberal Party said, okay, let's have a thing for all parties. We'll put a bill, we'll make it a law, not just an internal Liberal thing. We'll make it a law that if you're a developer or connected with development, you cannot stand for your local council.
Good idea.
Great idea. Then the Labour Party said, great idea, let's do it, and we'll sponsor the bill. And then somebody in the Liberal Party said, no, that would be a win for Labour.
Oh, good God.
Let's not do that. And now they've gone back to just making it an internal thing.
Oh, how petty politicking can really ruin things.
Yeah, you can understand why people are in different parties, but when a really good idea that's going to help the community comes up, it'd be nice if occasionally they could just go, yeah, you're right.
Let's work together on this.
Yeah, let's work together, make it sensible, get it through, and we all look a little bit better. And, you wonder, well, do you wonder anymore why people don't trust politicians?
Oh, that's appalling, really.
Yeah, but so it sounds like it's still going to go through for the Liberal Party, and then presumably Labour
will do the same.
And
but it would have been nice to have had a bipartisan move on this, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah, because it affects everybody, and it isn't a good look. And considering all the trouble that we've had in the building industry recently, they could do with sharpening up their image a little bit.
Sure, and I mean, both parties have had issues with these kind of things, Eddie Obeid and... Yeah, so neither side are clean hands.
No,
so it would be
nobody's
good for
squeaky
them,
clean.
So it would be good for them both to wash their hands
As
properly.
We should all be doing.
Exactly, while we're singing Happy Birthday.
Which segues neatly into our coronavirus chat, which we'll be doing after this. So what's the latest on coronavirus, Sue?
Well, there's an awful lot of confusion around it again. Lots of medical advice coming out, which all seems to be quite contradictory, really.
Yeah.
And confusing to lots of people.
Certainly was watching Insiders this morning.
Yeah, they made exactly that point too. And it's interesting, we talked before about apartments and how we can minimise the risk of infection in apartments because we're living in shared spaces, we're getting into the same lifts and we're using the same banisters on stairs, that kind of thing. But it's really hard because if somebody's suspected of having contracted the virus and they're asked to self-isolate, it becomes really difficult in an apartment where you're sharing with somebody. I was told yesterday about somebody who's suspected of having the virus, is just waiting to find out whether it's right, and she's been told to self-isolate. But she shares an apartment with one bathroom with somebody else. Now, how can you protect the other person in those situations? There doesn't seem to be much advice or any guidance about that whatsoever, really.
I was just listening to a BBC podcast this morning, and there's a politician, I think a Labour politician, who had gone down to London for the week for a sitting of Parliament, intending to go back to Yorkshire, and had been told to self-isolate because she'd been in contact with somebody with coronavirus. So she's now sharing a flat with her sister, but she stays in her room. And they have a shared bathroom, but when either of them uses it, they're absolutely fastidious in cleaning every surface and spraying and stuff. And her sister cooks her meals and leaves the food outside the bedroom door.
Not pushes it through the cat flap or anything for her. Oh, well, that's good.
That's
but it's
good.
kind of hard for some people. My nephew, for instance, shares a house with 10 other people.
Oh, my God.
They all share the same kitchen. They share a few bathrooms. But it's kind of difficult, especially with young people. Maybe they're not as fastidious as, us elderly people. It is really hard.
Terrible slur on the young people of Australia.
I know. But they don't have to be
grubby
as
little
fastidious.
sods that they are.
But they're at less risk, I suppose. It just makes me think that maybe, of course, we should wash our hands and disinfect certain surfaces that many people are using and be careful and have this little bit of social distance between each other and not shake hands. But maybe we should also be concentrating on something that they're not talking very much about, improving your immune system, and trying to boost your own immunity.
Yes.
Naturopaths would say things like, taking more vitamin C, for instance.
Yep.
Drinking lemon and ginger and garlic water is really fantastic for your immune system.
Not so great for your social life, but hey, you don't have a social life anymore.
That's right,
anyway.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And also exercise boosts your immunity as well. And I mean, the problem is with gyms, I don't know what's going to happen with them. There are rumours going around constantly, and I'm a real gym bunny, as you know, that the gyms might start closing.
Yeah.
But it might just be they start cutting the classes where you actually end up sharing a lot of equipment in quick succession.
Like the circuit training things.
That's right, because then you're all picking up a pair of weights, then you move off to the next station and you pick up something else, a barbell or something. Yeah. And so there's no chance to actually wipe the equipment. Whereas in, say, a pump class where you're using a certain amount of equipment that is yours solely for that class.
So you can wipe that down.
You can wipe that down beforehand and
if
afterwards.
the wipes are there.
Well, that's right. And I think the gyms are now running out of wipes and antiseptic spray.
And I know why.
Because the supermarket shelves are clear and because there's so much stockpiling.
There's that. But I did a spin class this morning, and there's 2 of these dispensers for the wipes, the sort of round things they pull the wipes out the top, big plastic things. And there's a holder on the wall for sprays. There was no sprays had gone. And one of the dispensers was empty. And the other dispenser, I watched other people going up, and where they might have taken out like 2 segments of the wipes, they were taking 4 and 6.
Oh, wow.
Everybody's sort of overdoing it.
Yep.
Like buying toilet rolls. It's just like, we're being over anxious in these things.
Oh, that's a shame, because we want the gyms to stay open because we want to, it's fantastic doing exercise. That really helps you stay healthy.
Yeah. And the other thing we were talking about just the other night was how this could be the major shift we've been waiting for in the way we work. Because if more and more people are told to work from home, and we've all got our high-speed internet and whatnot, so, people are basically already, whether they realise it or not, they're probably set up to work from home. And if this goes on for more than a few months, then the employers are going to go, hang on, everybody's at home, they're working, their productivity's actually gone up because they're not spending 2 hours in the train every day.
And chatting over the water cooler every
talking about
lunchtime.
What they did at the weekend. And we could save a heap of money on office space. So it could happen. This could be the thing that breaks the old you've got to turn up for work thing.
Yeah, because I remember when I first wanted to work from home, employers saying, oh, no, because we can't actually keep tabs on you at home. And you kind of think, well, you can see the amount of work I would produce, but that didn't seem to be a good enough argument. And we were hearing from one person who works for a multinational company who is allowed to work from home, but has a camera trained on her.
It takes a picture every 5 minutes.
Yes.
And if she's not there for several 5-minute blocks, she gets a phone call. Where are you?
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you wouldn't want to work for a company like that, would you?
I remember when people in the British civil service started working from home, they got emails saying they were not allowed to work in their pajamas. What's the point,
Yeah.
You work from home, you work in your pajamas. Everybody knows that.
Yes, and I worked really, really hard one day last week. And about 5 o'clock, I thought I might nip out for a cup of coffee. I'd started at 6 a.m. At 5 p.m., I thought, oh, gosh, I need a break. And I suddenly looked down and realised I was still in my pajamas. So that could have been awful, going downtown in my pajamas.
It could be, but
for other people,
I've seen stranger
not
things.
For me.
Seen stranger things. Yes, right. So the coronavirus is with us. We're getting conflicting things about handshaking, and I think I might have to revise my thing about fist bumping.
Yes, because that's too much. isn't it, really? Or somebody elbowed me this morning.
Really?
And kind of, our elbows jarred against each other as well.
All right. So,
So
be gentle with your elbows, folks.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Gladys Berejiklian the other day kind of grasp somebody's elbow, and that was kind of quite nice, really.
All right.
Yeah.
I saw her reeling away from the Prime Minister.
Yes.
As he offered his hand, and she looked like she was ready to jump out the window.
Yeah. In Ethiopia, they do this good thing. They bump shoulders.
All right.
And they always have, and it's kind of like an intimacy thing. It's kind of quite nice,
close,
really.
Face to face. I mean, a metre and a half is supposed to be the safe distance.
Or I've just been in India, and you put your hands together and you bow.
Namaste.
Namaste. And in Thailand,
Prince Charles does that now.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice thing.
And I like the Muslim greeting where men greet women or vice versa. They put their hand on their heart.
Yes, and they bow.
And bow slightly.
Yes,
and
that's nice too. It's a nice gesture of respect.
And the Japanese bow. Yeah, I do like that. I do like the bowing.
Yeah.
A bit of namaste with bowing, that works for me. And there's no physical contact unless you're really close to the person and accidentally headbutt them. But that's a whole other thing. When we come back, we'll have our Hey Marthas for this week. And we're back. Well, we're still on the subject of coronavirus because it's dominating all our lives, even with our funny Hey Martha segment. Sue, what have you got?
Well, did you see the chief medical officer on TV this morning?
On Insiders.
That's right. And he was talking about, all the kind of things that we should be doing. And they asked him, well, should we be shaking hands? Having experienced him coming on the show and then trying to shake hands with all the people on the show. And two of them refused and two of them shook hands, probably not really thinking about it.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, no, we're not telling people not to shake hands until it gets worse. And you kind of think that's crazy. I mean, if we don't shake hands, maybe it won't get worse. It seems pretty pathetic, especially when we've got so many good alternatives, as we've already discussed.
Yes.
And it's kind of funny that the chief medical officer comes along and tries to shake hands, and two people refuse to shake his hand.
Yeah, like there's two people way ahead of you on this, and you're supposed to be the big expert for the whole country.
It doesn't give you much confidence, does it
doesn't,
really?
no. Well, my funny story is also related, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, as you know. The whole toilet paper buying thing has spread like a virus to Britain and America. They're all bulk buying toilet paper, soap, tinned food, like they're getting ready for the apocalypse over there. It makes us look quite sensible and reserved.
Wow, that's fantastic, because I think we were feeling very stupid. As if coronavirus gives us terrible diarrhea or something.
Yeah.
But in Hawaii, do you remember they have lots of emergency packs?
Oh, the volcano
food?
Packs, yeah.
Yes.
They were great. They should be selling them here, because you could buy like a week's worth of food or a month's worth or 3 months, and it was guaranteed you 3 meals every day for however long you bought them. And they didn't take up, I mean, the 3 months thing was about the size of an overnight case, a carry-on bag. So it's all must be dried food.
And that's fantastic, because I don't actually know what like a week's worth of food looks like. I know that's a terrible thing to admit, but I mean, I just kind of eat out a bit and eat out a lot, really.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, if this coronavirus gets really bad, I'll probably just get lots of Uber Eats. Well, of course, if it gets really bad, cafes and restaurants will close down, as we've seen in France and Belgium already, and I won't be able to phone Uber Eats. I'll be completely and utterly lost. I'll be relying on friends and family who have been stockpiling food and know a little bit more about cooking than I do.
And it did occur to us when we were discussing the volcano survival packs in Hawaii that it's all good if you can get clean water.
Yeah, well, you do need clean water to rehydrate the food, I suppose.
Yeah. One comment from one of the women on the NPR politics thing about the panic buying. She said, look, I saw all these people panic buying and I thought this is crazy. And then I suddenly realized, oh, they're buying all the stuff. I need to panic buy, not because of the virus, but because of the panic buying.
Right, because she won't be able to get any supplies whatsoever.
No, because everybody else is buying all the stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Well,
hopefully this will be over soon.
Well,
hopefully next week we won't have to discuss it because it will be just a memory. Wouldn't that be nice?
I suspect that's not going to happen. But hopefully we and all our listeners will survive for another week. We'll talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, and would you still be listening if you didn't, you can subscribe free of charge on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and lots of other podcast platforms. As I said, it's free of charge, and that means the podcast will be delivered directly to your phone, laptop, or computer as soon as it's published. You'll find links at the end of the show notes, that's the related story, on the Flat Chat website. And the website is where you go to find the stories we've been discussing today, as well as about 10 years of archives and, of course, your questions and answers on the Flat Chat forum. Just log in to flat-chat.com.au to ask a question or, even better, answer someone else's. Okay, thanks for listening. Talk to you again soon. Someone in the Liberal Party, and this is in New South Wales. Someone in the Liberal Party, and this is in New South Wales,